Hello and welcome to GuyLogic. My name is Temco and today we are taking a look at a game called Song of the Deep, developed by Insomniac Games. This is their second title. This is Song of the Deep, a 2D puzzle platformer. They're calling it a Metroidvania style action adventure game. I would tend to disagree with that a little bit. It's basically a puzzle platformer under the ocean in a submarine. It's a 2D game and a very cutesy art style, which looks stunning in any and all regards. So before we dive into the gameplay, let's go ahead and dive into the options and talk a little bit about all of that, and then head on into the gameplay section. Options wise, there are sliders for music, sound and speech, which is good. There's no master volume, but generally I don't mind that as much as there no being other options, so I'm okay with this. And there are subtitles on or off, which is great. You have resolution options, which is a bit weird because I've cycled through all of them. It doesn't really obey that quite well. I've had it go back to 1280 by 720. It's a bit weird, but once you lock it in, it does work. Full screen on or off, no windowed full screen, but it doesn't really constrain mouse to window properly either, so that is a bit of a shame. You can VSync it at 30, 60 or unlocked, which is fine, and you have changed brightness levels and as well language changes as well. This is only for the text. The voiceover and the narrator is always in English, which is a bit of a shame if you have multi-language, but with subtitles on you can still follow it sort of. But again, yeah, just in English for the voiceovers. Controller wise, you have 3 difficulty settings, and on the intermediate difficulty I found the game to be slightly too easy for me personally. Once you figure it out and once you get past the control scheme, which I'll talk about in a little bit, you can get around doing quite a few things. Vibrations on or off, or either gamepad or mouse and keyboard. There is no rebindable keys, and that is a damn shame. You play releasing a game on the keyboard, you want rebindable keys, and the way this control scheme is set up is atrocious. It is W for powering your ship to move, and then using your mouse for directional changes, but that's really weird and it really feels strange. And then you have dodge and sonar and searchlights and stuff like that, and then you have a variety of things on your mouse as well. Overall, they did really think about control scheme, because if you go to the gamepad, there's quite a few changes here which allow you to customize things how you do them. So all good on them on that front. But on the keyboard side of things, because they map the movement to the W key and directions to the mouse, it really boils down to just not having the analog stick, which is really tedious and annoying and really lowers your control in the game, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Other than that, you have mouse sensitivity, and that is that. Once you sort that out and you head back to the main menu, that is it. There's no further graphical options. Again, it is a 2D game, those generally do not have a lot of options, but I would have liked to see some options such as anti-aliasing or higher shadow effects or stuff like that for either lower end or higher end systems to get a little bit extra oomph out of the system. Also no colorblind mode, which in this game would be a nice addition because the game is definitely based a lot around color and color scheming and the way backdrops and various light and dark sources mix and match together. So that's a bit of a shame they did not have something like that. But again, it's an indie title, so there's only so much we can ask out of them. So overall, the game runs fine performance wise. I had no drops outside of an initial loading drop, which some micro stuttering in the initial 2 or 3 minutes of the game, which I could never reproduce again. So I'm not sure if it's that part of the map that's just very badly optimized, but as you never return to that part of the map after the first 2 or 3 minutes, you shouldn't have too many issues with that at all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into gameplay. Now, I've already completed the game and restarted a new map for you, and I'm going to show you about the first 15 or so minutes of the game. I'll skip through all the cutscenes so I don't spoil any of the story, which is really what this game is all about. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Song of the Deep is a heavily narrative game, and the narrator, which I'll shut up and let you listen to,
shimmered with mystery. Glow kelp bulbs lit up around her as she passed by.
Is probably one of my favorite things about this game so far. Now, gameplay wise, there is 2 major issues I have, and I'll get into those in a little bit. But from a narrative experience, from a story driven experience, this reads as a children's book. Even the cutscenes and intros and everything like that are these sort of artistically drawn stills with almost story-like book pages that display how the game tells a story. And this little character, always be referred to in the third person, is really good and really reminds me of the old children's books that you had in the library about Tom Sawyer and all the stuff like that. And it captures that nostalgic sense, for me at least, very well, and doesn't make it ride the nostalgia train. It's a really well written story, and the dialogue and the way the characters are portrayed really fits the entire cohesive narrative. There is no grim and dark without a beacon of light in here. Everything is sort of dark and gloomy, but on the other hand, everything is, you know, is going to be alright. And that entire vibe of the children's story-esque style of it really is well done. Now, from a visual standpoint, the game does a phenomenal job of portraying interactive objects, save points, loading areas, enemies, back and foreground, which is something lots of these 2D games with multiple back and foreground assets have a lot of trouble with. You always know if something is in the background or the foreground, and you also know when something is transitioning to the foreground, as enemies, when they spawn in the background and sort of move to the foreground in many situations. And you can always notice that when this happens. So it's really well made and put together. Now, the only critique I have regarding this very specific point is sometimes something in the background or foreground is obstructing something you need on your playing field, such an interactive object or pickup. Often just moving a bit to the side will reveal that object as you need it, but in certain situations you just need to go on good luck and sort of aim down there. In some parts of the game this is done deliberately to make things more difficult for the player, with smoke and corals and stuff growing ahead and in front, sort of make the more maze-like experience. And there is lights you can use to look in the dark, and there is sonar you can use to sort of map out dark spots. You get that way down later in the game, and all of this does help out with this aspect. But the main part I'd like to convey here is that it looks bloody phenomenal. The art style is exquisite, and it really conveys the way they're also telling the story. I always say narrative cohesion is important, but visual cohesion to that narrative is even more so very vital, because if your art style and the way the gameplay experience doesn't convey what the story is conveying, you're gonna have this massive disconnect between what the player is expected to feel and what the player is actually feeling, because that's what they're experiencing. And this game does capture that in a very well done manner. The submarine you're in is a rickety little thing just cobbled together by a child, and it looks that way and it feels that way. The way upgrades work also feels into that whole scrapyard feel of it, where you just cobble things together and they just sort of fit. It doesn't break into a rat look style where it just looks junked, but it does make it feel like something a child would cobble together with various colors and various hues and various shapes, which is pretty cool. Everything else in the game though follows different art styles. Not everything is designed around, oh, a child must have made this, or this has to look child friendly. No, the big bads look like big bads. The various architectures that are available in the game, and there's a few from different biomes, do feel significantly different. Ruins of the mermaid people look sufficiently different from the ruins from the high-tech people or the underground caverns with the demons and monsters. They all look very different and also feel very different between sound assets, visual cues, the kind of creatures that are there, the kind of fish, the kind of back and foreground assets. Everything is well made and well put together to convey this entire feeling of, hey, this is a vibrant, multifaceted world, and it does a great job at that. Now, story-wise, as I said, very narrative focused, very narratively driven. You are given an objective, and based on that objective, you're gonna get a couple of pseudo cutscenes, either a few real cutscene or just a narrator saying a few lines while you're playing. Sometimes these are story hints, sometimes these are pure story fluff, so to say, and sometimes they provide you a little bit of a additional bit of information or a hint regarding a new mechanic being introduced. Now, it is quite important to note this as a whole, that is a great experience from that angle. But what doesn't make it a great experience is the mechanics, the way they work. Movement in this game is atrocious. Now, initially I started playing this game with a mouse and keyboard. As I said earlier in the options menu segment, you move your submarine using the W key and then steer it using your mouse. Problem is, the game was clearly not designed for this movement set, because there is such a lack of control that 9 out of 10 times you can't turn on a dime, you can't slow down fast enough, you can't stop moving, you can't aim in the proper direction properly. And all of this boils down to the fact that they translated the analog stick that you have on a controller, whether it be Xbox or Steam controller or PlayStation controller, into a W and a mouse movement, and it just didn't work quite well. So I struggled through it because I wanted to see if it improved later on on, or if there was something I missed or mechanically didn't notice initially, there wasn't. And by a certain point, I actually couldn't use the mouse and keyboard to perform a puzzle simply because the controls on mouse and keyboard were that bad. So that is definitely a downside to this game. Unless you're playing it on a controller, you're going to have a seriously reduced pleasure out of it. Even on a story level basis, even on the lowest difficulty, if you just want to experience the story, you're still going to have a lot of issues with the control scheme unless you're using a controller, and that is a bit of a shame for a PC release. Once I switched to my Steam controller, I had so few issues with this because the controls suddenly were very fluid. The auto aim mechanic, where it instantly snaps to a specific target if it's interactive, or to an enemy if it's available, worked way better than the very sort of precise mouse and keyboard controls that ran all over the place. So on a gamepad it works fine, on a mouse and keyboard it is a exercise in frustration, and that is a damn shame. Now, speaking about mechanics, the game does try to sort of appear to a story-driven aspect, and it does do the best it can with the limited set of mechanics it has given itself. The problem is that boss battles are often very boring because of it, because the mechanics you have are a pull and drag and a rocket launcher that shoots torpedoes, and that's really all you have available. So all the boss battles are a variation on either grabbing something, throwing something, or shooting something in a few sequences. Which means that once you figure out how to do a boss in a very specific manner, that is not going to change for the rest of that battle. Now there's a few bosses, and the bosses themselves are quite interesting. Again, artistically, this game is phenomenal, and everything does tie in together quite well. But from a gameplay perspective, it does have quite a few things that I'm not too happy with, especially in the control and mechanical department. There's also a couple of more things that, while I understand them, I don't like. One of those is these clams. These clams are all over the place, and you can throw stuff into them, and if they like what they throw into them, you get money. There's quite a few of these, and these are objects you gather, and you can gather these all over the place. And one of the core things about this game is that it really opens up initially. Now, initially you're going to have very few objects to open special doors, such as glass doors or hard concrete doors and stuff like that. But later on, you're going to unlock missiles, and you're going to unlock thrust missiles, and you're going to unlock quite a few things to open a variety of doors. And that will really open the map up for you. So you can start roaming around freeform, sort of open world style. Again, the objectives you have to do lock you away from certain parts of the story, so you can't do a part of a story that is way down the line, but you are able to do things a bit in an open world manner, just so you have exploration and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But there doesn't really seem to be much that this exploration adds outside of a few coins you can use for upgrades that are not exactly quite interesting. More range on your grappling hood, more speed on your boost, stuff like that. Nothing really spectacular or unique, just linear upgrades you're going to get regardless because you need them to perform certain tasks. This doesn't mean that the upgrades are bad, they're just bland. They're linear, you buy them, you have them, there's no decision making involved. You just get the next upgrade. It's a very flat and linear system. It does the job, but it doesn't get any praise for it. Now, something the game will definitely get praise for is the way it handles puzzles. The boss battles I found very boring overall, but the puzzles I found very, very well done. Every tier of the game, so all the 4, 5, 6 zones you have available in the game, have a sort of a gimmick. Be this bomb throwing, be this gimmick currents, be this gimmick enemies of a certain type or variety. Every zone has its gimmick, but the way they combine all these various mechanics into that sort of gimmick allows for quite a few varieties on puzzles. Be they from lasers you have to redirect, be they from very specific mazes you have to traverse with glowing light bulb to guide certain creatures to open the path for you. There's quite a few mechanics here in play that allow for a variety of puzzles that remain interesting throughout the gameplay experience. Now the game, unless you really like collecting secrets and really like collecting objects you missed in the first run, doesn't have a lot of replay value. But the full 8 to 10 hour experience I got from the story, I got from the game itself, were definitely great. Like I said, the story plays like a children's book. So every step of the way you're going to find out something a little bit more. Every step of the way it's going to narrate something interesting. And that is really cool because it's really nice to go ahead and finish a puzzle or finish a segment or complete an objective and then get this little cutscene explaining things and how well they are made. So in that department, Song of the Deep does a phenomenal job. In the department of mechanics, especially movement controls and especially upgrades and mechanical complexity in combat, which which is something you'll be doing quite a bit, the game is definitely lackluster. It does miss the mark on that regard. But if you are not interested in the combat-esque style of gameplay, if you're more interested into the narrative experience, into the world experience, into the art style, then this game does a bloody phenomenal job of the entire thing. Now, as I said, the game opens up quite a bit, but what it doesn't really do well is allow effective movement. Again, once you open up the map, you get these teleporters. You can teleport between different segments of the map. But even then, oftentimes you'll be traversing and rethreading the same map segments time and time again over the course of your gameplay experience to go from A to B to C to D, which is definitely a shame. The game does pad itself a little bit in that regard. It's not a lot because you can use the teleporters, and oftentimes when you go to a new segment, you are going into a new zone of the map you haven't explored yet. But especially in the second half of the game, after you kill the first 2 or 3 bosses, you do get to a point where you are retreading the same map zones, because then you have the ability to break down concrete walls, and then you go back and grab a few items from those locations, and then later down the line you have the ability to break glass walls, and you then go back and open a few of those, which is a little bit grindy and tedious. But if you enjoy that sort of thing, that is up to you. The shop system is basically just buying flat upgrades. There's nothing really involved in there, and there is no real additional interaction or anything like that. What is pretty cool that on a certain point you get the ability to get out of your submarine and swim around as the little girl, and I do like how they've included this as a integral part, that you have to sometimes use both the submarine and the little girl in cohesion to solve certain puzzles. So you have to park your submarine in a specific spot, then get a girl to do a certain task, then get back to the submarine, and then vice versa, do those things in a staged environment. Also, there's tunnels and pathways and secrets and hidden locations where the submarine can go, but the little girl can, and that is pretty cool. I do like that they added that little extra dimension to movement outside of just the submarine, adding the little girl to that. I do like that. So overall, to bring it to my conclusion, is that Song of the Deep does a phenomenal job from a art, visual, and narrative cohesion style. It does a great job. But from both a mechanical complexity, as well as difficulty, as well as mechanical implementation of the various movement mechanics, it is a bit subpar. I would definitely not call it Metroidvania. I would more akin it to many other 2D puzzle platformers that do a great job in many regards, but do mess up on the mechanics for movement on a PC. Once I switched to the gamepad though, for my Steam controller, no issues whatsoever, and the game performed absolutely fine also in the mechanical movement department. So this is purely a PC issue. What I also didn't like about the game is the retreading of zones and places you've already been to. But again, depending on your enjoyment of finding secrets and figuring out certain puzzles, the game does have a lot of content for you. If you just want a story, it's about 8 to 10 hours, and it is very enjoyable and very well put together in the children's storybook style, which I do really like. So, Song of the Deep comes out on July 12th over on Steam, and you can go check it out if it seems to be up your alley. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, press the like button below. If you didn't like this video, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose. And leave a comment. Tell us what we can do better. Tell us what we did great. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and we will deliver. So until next time, right here on GuyLogic.